It's spring, 1976. A man walks into the most fortified bank on the French Riviera carrying nothing more dangerous than an alarm clock. He rents a safety deposit box deep inside the vault, locks the clock inside, sets it for midnight, and walks back out into the nice sunshine like a man without a thing on his mind. Because the one question he has spent months building toward is this: when that clock starts screaming at midnight inside a sealed, steel-walled vault, does anyone up here hear it? Midnight arrives. The city stays quiet. No sirens, no patrol cars, nothing. Sitting alone in the dark, Albert Spaggiari allows himself a slow and satisfied smile. In 60 days, he and 20 men will crawl through the city's sewer system and cut into the floor of that vault. 8 meters of tunnel, 96 hours of uninterrupted access. 46 million francs gone, and on the wall, one sentence painted in a dozen different colors by a dozen different hands. Without hatred, without violence, without weapons. Albert Spaggiari is 43 years old, and he does not look like what he is. He runs a portrait studio on Rue de France weddings, communions, family sessions. Patient with difficult mothers-in-law, candy for the children who won't sit still. His clients trust him completely. They have no idea who he used to be. At 19, he shipped out to Indochina as a paratrooper. He came back with a medal, a deep silence, and cold contempt for institutions. He drifted, did a short prison sentence for a robbery he later called impressively stupid, and came out with something far more dangerous than the recklessness that put him in: patience. The real transformation happened quietly. Over a year, 3 streets from his studio, curiosity became compulsion. He kept handwritten logs of guard rotations, memorized every camera angle, knew the exact hour the armored truck arrived and left. He rented boxes he didn't need just to get another look inside. Made small cash transactions to stay in the building 3 minutes longer watching. Spaggiari didn't decide to rob the Société Générale and then plan it. He fell into an obsession so total that the plan became the only logical conclusion of where his mind had already gone. The Société Générale on Rue de l'Hôtel des Postes, the bank every security consultant in southern France, agreed on one point about: you cannot rob it. Spaggiari had crossed from thinking about it to knowing, with absolute certainty, that he was going to try. Beneath the marble lobby sat the largest private vault in southern France. 4,000 safety deposit boxes, floor to ceiling. Steel reinforced concrete on all 6 sides, walls thicker than a grown man's arm. A time lock that sealed every Friday at 6 and could not be opened by anyone, including the bank's own director, until Tuesday morning. Inside lived the shadow economy of the Côte d'Azur: undeclared cash, gold smuggled out of Algeria, diamonds in velvet, love letters that would end political careers. The mayor of Nice himself was rumored to have a box down there. No central record of what any box contained. Half the wealth in that vault didn't officially exist anywhere on Earth. The entire security philosophy rested on one idea: you cannot steal what you cannot reach. And confident in that, the engineers made one quiet decision that would eventually cost them everything. They did not install a sound alarm. Nobody was getting in. But Spaggiari hadn't been staring at the vault. He had been staring at the ground beneath it. Weeks before the alarm clock test, Spaggiari was walking the streets of Nice at night with 19th century sewer maps under his arm. Nice sits over a labyrinth. Beneath the boulevards runs a second city of stone tunnels, some wide enough to stand in, some barely wide enough to drag yourself through flat on your stomach. He went in alone. Flashlight, compass. He counted steps, triangulated against streets above, and mapped what he found against what was on paper. He emerged in the early hours smelling like everything that drains out of a city, cleaned up, and opened the studio at 9. What he eventually confirmed: a municipal storm drain running directly beneath the bank, 8 meters from the floor of the vault. 8 meters of earth, then concrete, then steel, a straight line. He had his door. Now he needed the men to dig it. Spaggiari went to Marseille and found 20 men, ex-soldiers, welders, locksmiths, men who had learned patience the hard way. The French press would eventually call them La Gang des Égoutiers, the sewer gang. In May 1976, the digging began. Every night after the last cafe closed, 4 to 6 men dropped into the storm drain and worked in rotating shifts. They strung hundreds of meters of electrical cable for light, ferried equipment on rubber rafts across flooded sections, carried excavated dirt out in their pockets so maintenance crews wouldn't notice. The tunnel was never wide enough to turn around in. You went in head first and came out crawling backward through the dark. The smell was beyond description. One man passed out from the fumes and had to be dragged out feet first. Another opened a deep gash on his hand against rusted iron and refused to surface, wrapped it in a rag and finished the shift bleeding, neither stopping nor speaking. Every time a car braked too hard above, every man froze completely still until the sound passed. Spaggiari was down there every single night. By the second week of July, 60 nights of work complete, the tunnel was done 8 meters of hand-cut earth, ending at a thin shell of concrete. On the other side, the floor of the most protected private vault in France. He chose the date with the same precision he had applied to everything else. July 14th, Bastille Day. The bank sealed Friday at 6, wouldn't open until Tuesday morning, 96 hours. Friday night, just past midnight, 20 men dropped into the drain carrying torches, drills, hydraulic jacks, 30 tanks of compressed gas, and 4 days of food and water. It took most of the night to cut through. In the early hours of Saturday morning, the last layer of concrete gave way. Albert Spaggiari pulled himself up through the floor of the vault and stood inside it, the first person in history to enter that room without permission. And for a few seconds, nobody moved. They stood in the silence of a room never supposed to exist for them and looked at the walls. 4,000 boxes rising floor to ceiling, steel doors in rows so precise they looked printed. No alarm, no voice, just the weight of what they had done settling into the room like air. One man later said stepping into the vault felt too clean, too still, like a dream that hadn't earned its own ending yet. Then Spaggiari walked to the vault door, the great sealed door the entire building had been constructed to protect, and welded it shut from the inside. Nobody getting in, nobody getting out. This room was theirs for the weekend. They set up a folding table in the center of the vault. Foie gras, baguettes, cheese, Bordeaux, air mattresses for sleeping in shifts. Around the clock, they worked the hydraulic press, cracking each box in roughly 6 minutes. Cash in francs, dollars, Deutschmarks, gold ingots, diamonds and black velvet. They took everything liquid. They left the documents and love letters across the floor. By Sunday afternoon, 371 boxes had been opened. Then a summer storm rolled in off the Mediterranean, and the water in the drain below began to rise fast. They packed up immediately. Before leaving, Spaggiari handed every man a different paint marker, a different color. 1 letter at a time, each by a different hand, so no single person's writing could ever be matched to the message. They painted 1 sentence onto the vault wall, without hatred, without violence, without weapons. In the early hours of Monday, they disappeared back into the sewer, duffel bags of cash and gold dragged behind them through the dark. The branch manager arrived Tuesday morning and placed both hands on the vault door. The time lock had released. It should have swung open. It did not move. 6 hours later, police cut through from the outside and stepped into one of the most photographed crime scenes in modern French history. The picnic table, still set, empty bottles, foie gras tins, 371 open boxes, old love letters across the floor, the sentence on the wall. A junior officer found the hole in the corner almost by accident. By that evening, every radio station in France was running the story. Within days, it had a name, Le Cas du siècle, the heist of the century. The investigation touched every corner of southern France's criminal world. 3 months of nothing. Then an ex-girlfriend of one crew member walked into a police station and gave up a name. That name led to 2 more. 2 more led to Spaggiari. Arrested at Nice airport in November, he smiled for the cameras. Through months of questioning, he gave up nothing. Fictional names, false addresses, stories that went nowhere. Caught in a contradiction, he apologized pleasantly and moved on. On the 10th of March, 1977, he was brought before investigating magistrate Richard Bouaziz. A warm morning, window open to a Riviera spring. He answered questions calmly with that unhurried small smile. At one point, he leaned across the desk and handed the judge a hand-drawn diagram of the tunnel. The judge looked down. Spaggiari stood up, walked to the window, said he needed some air, and jumped. 2 stories. He landed on a Peugeot below, rolled into the street, and climbed onto a motorcycle that had been idling at the curb for over an hour. By the time anyone reached the window, he was gone. He would never set foot in France again. Weeks later, the Peugeot's owner found an envelope in his mailbox. A check for 5,000 francs for the damage to his roof. No name, no address, no note. A French court tried him in absentia and sentenced him to life imprisonment. The sentence was never served. He spent 12 years moving between Buenos Aires, Madrid, and a villa somewhere in southern France no police officer ever found. He published a memoir. 2 films were made about him. The Société Générale recovered almost none of the money. Many depositors never came forward, unwilling to explain what they had been hiding. On the 10th of June, 1989, his mother found him in the courtyard, 56 years old. The lung cancer had finally caught up. He never gave up a single name, never returned a single franc. From the moment he cleared that courthouse window to the morning his mother found him, he did not spend 1 more hour inside a French prison. Here is what the Société Générale never wanted anyone to understand. The vault had been designed to survive force, armored doors, reinforced walls. The engineers had imagined every version of assault and built against all of them. What they had never designed against was patience, because the entire system rested on one assumption. No rational person would spend 60 nights in raw sewage for a problem that looked impossible. The security wasn't the steel. The security was the belief that human beings have limits. Albert Spaggiari didn't. Every institution that calls itself impenetrable is betting that whoever stands on the other side will eventually decide it isn't worth it. He decided it was, without hatred, without violence, without weapons, just 1 alarm clock, 8 meters of tunnel, and 60 nights in the dark the Société Générale never saw coming.